In this video, I'm going to show you an Excel template I have created to export Excel data into PowerPoint. So when I was working as a business analyst, every month I had to do a presentation walking the management through the financial situation. And the data for that presentation was coming from my Excel file. So in that Excel file, I did all my analysis and created all kinds of different charts. Now, once I was done with my analysis, I needed a quick and easy way to export all my Excel data and charts into PowerPoint. And that is why I created this template. But I think it might be easier if I just show you how it works. So here I just have a normal PowerPoint file that I'm using as a template. Inside you will see that I've used placeholders for the title, subtitle and the creation date. And then on the next slides I added a couple of more placeholders for the management summary and the key points of the presentation. After that I've got a couple of blank slides. Each one just has the title with another placeholder and below that some blank space. In that space I want to insert my Excel charts later. And since I have a few charts for different types of analysis, I created 2 more of those blank slides. Alright, so this is my PowerPoint template. Now to fill that template with my Excel data, let me open my workbook. This is now my working file. That means this is where I have my source data, which in my case is some sales transactions along with some product information. Based on that data, I created a report sheet. Here I used the pivot table and some charts, plus an input area for the management summary and the key points of my finding, and some metadata like the title, the subtitle and the reporting month. So the idea here is that once I get new data for the next month, I just adjust the pivot slicer here. That way all my charts get updated. Once they're updated, I can start my analysis. After that, I will present my findings directly inside the charts using comment boxes, and I will also update the management summary and the key findings. Next, for the metadata, I also added a small drop-down menu to select the current month. Alright, so with that in place, I will now go to my export sheet. And this is where the magic happens. So the sheet is kind of like a control panel. Here I can choose which chart goes to which slide, and I can also set the values for the text placeholders. Now at the top I entered the file path to my PowerPoint template we just have looked at, and I typed in the output file name for the presentation. And in just a moment I will show you how to set everything up from scratch. But for now I'm just gonna go ahead and click the export button. Once I do that, the template opens, my charts get exported, and all the placeholders get replaced. And after that's done, I get a quick notification in Excel. Now when I check my folder, I will see the new presentation here. And when I open it, you will notice that all my placeholders have been now replaced with the values from Excel, and all my charts are now added as images on the correct slides. So basically I've got now a presentation that's ready to go. But of course, if you want, you can still manually add a few more comments or include data and charts that aren't coming from Excel. But overall, this was the workflow I used in my job. So whenever a new month came in, I refreshed my data source in Excel, then updated my pivot tables and charts, added my comments, pressed the button, and my new presentation was ready to send out. This obviously saved me a ton of time, so I hope it's gonna save you some time too. Now the only downside is that you do need to spend a little time up front to set everything up. So to show you what I mean, let me walk you through an example. Here I've got my Excel workbook again, which I'll be using as a source for my PowerPoint presentation. Now to add the export functionality, I will show you the Excel template I have created. When you open that template, this is what it looks like. Here all you need to do is to click on the Insert Template button. Once you do that, you can select the workbook where you want to inject the PowerPoint export functionality. So here I will select the workbook I just showed you. Once I confirm the selection, all the VBA macros will be copied over to that file. And after that's done, you will see a new file in your directory. So the tool made a copy of your original file, added the code and saved it as a macro-enabled workbook, which you can see right here. Now when I open that workbook, all your data is still there. The only difference is that you now have the Excel to PowerPoint control panel. Alright, and with that in place, you can now fill out the template. And this is what I meant earlier when I talked about the initial setup. So here you will need to define which chart should be exported to which slide and also set up the text placeholders. So let's quickly do it together. First, I will define the file path to my PowerPoint template. To do that, just right click on your PowerPoint file and choose Copy as Path. Then go back to Excel and paste in that path into this cell here. Just make sure to remove the quotation marks at the beginning and the end. Okay, next, let us adjust the text placeholders. Here you want to input the placeholder text you have used in your PowerPoint presentation. In my presentation, I have used placeholders for the title, subtitle, the creation date, the management summary, and the key points and the reporting month. Now the next step is to define the values that should replace those placeholders. And here you can use an Excel formula, type in the value directly, like business update, or link it to another cell. But in my case, I'm actually going to use named ranges. So let me show you how that works. Here in my report sheet, I want to use the value of this cell here as my presentation title. For that, just click on the cell, then go to the name box here at the top and type in the name and press enter. Now I'm using here the prefix of RNG, so that stands for range, but you don't have to do that. You can name your range whatever you like. Alright, and now I will do the same for the other cells. So I will click on the subtitle cell and name it RNG subtitle. Okay, so let me go ahead and also name all the other cells I want to export later. Once I have done that, I will see all my named ranges here in this list. When you select it, you will also see which cell it's pointing to. Now for the text placeholders, it makes sense to use a single cell, but for charts I want to use a range of cells. And to make it easier to see, let me turn on the grid lines. So the idea here is to define the range that should be exported to PowerPoint as an image. So the export to PowerPoint tool will take a snapshot of that range. And whatever is in that range, whether it's a chart, a shape, or even a table, will be exported as an image. So in my case, this range contains an Excel chart. But again, it doesn't matter what's inside. As long as it fits within the range, it will be exported as an image. Alright, so once I've selected my range, I will give it a name as well. Again, you can name it however you like. I will use the prefix RNG again and call it 𝗗𝗦𝗦𝗧𝗜𝗢𝗡 and then press enter. Alright, and with that said, I will now just continue with the rest of my charts. So that means I will select the cells around the chart, give that range a name and press enter. Once that is in place, you can also double check everything by selecting your named ranges from the drop-down list. If you do that, the range will be highlighted in your sheet. So as I mentioned earlier, the tool will then later on take a snapshot of that selected range. But that also means if grid lines are turned on, they will be also visible in the final image. So to avoid that, you can either use a white fill color for the cells or just turn off the grid lines. Okay, and with that we are almost done. Now we just need to enter the names of the ranges inside the control panel. So after inputting all the names, the last step is to define where those snapshots should be later placed in PowerPoint. For now, I will just copy the dummy data here and adjust the slide numbers. So the sales by product chart should go on the slide number 3. After that, we will have our sales by product category. And on slide 5, I want to show 2 charts, so the sales by store location and by payment method. Alright, with that in place, I will now do the same for the text placeholders. So here I will insert the named ranges we defined for each placeholder tag. Now with that everything set up, we are now ready to click on the export button. Here you will now see that all the images are inserted into the slides and that all the placeholders are going to be replaced. Once that is done, we get a notification in Excel. Okay, so now let us take a look at the new presentation that was just created. Here you will now see that the placeholders have been indeed replaced and that all the ranges were exported as images. Now the only thing left to do is to adjust the size and the position of the charts. And again, this part is really just a one-time setup. So that means I will go through each slide and resize and reposition the charts as needed. Once I'm done with that, I will place my PowerPoint and my Excel files side by side. Because the final step is now to update the dummy values in Excel with the actual image properties. So to do that, just select the image in PowerPoint. Then, back in Excel, click on the Get Image Properties button. This will now copy the image properties to your clipboard. Now I can go to the width field and press Ctrl and V to paste in the correct values. Alright, and I will now do the same for all the other charts. So selecting the image, getting the image properties, and then pasting them into the matching rows. Once that is done, I will now have my fully automated solution ready to go. So to test it out, let me export the data one more time. When that is finished, you will now see a new presentation in your directory. And by the way, the tool will never override any existing presentation. So since we already had a file named business update, it automatically added a new version number. So that is why we now see version 2 here. And when I open this new version, you will see that all the charts are now placed exactly where we specified them. So like I said, it does take a bit of setup time at the beginning. But once everything is in place, it will save you a ton of time going forward. Alright, now if you want to download the template, check out the first link in the description box below. After your purchase, you will get the download link via email along with a link to the Getting Started video. And that Getting Started video explains everything in even more detail, really step by step. Alright guys, and that is all I have for you today. I hope you find this template helpful, and as always, thanks for watching and I will see you in the next video.